This podcast is part of the Red5 Network. For more Red5 Network podcasts, visit red5network.com.
So what I told you was true, from a certain point of view.
Hello there, everybody, and happy beeps today because we are talking Last Jedi, and this is episode 50. We are halfway to 100 if you're counting at home. I'm Josh.
Yeah, speaking of happy beeps, I kind of figured out what my droid designation would be. I think I landed on 4D4M.
4D4M.
Yeah.
Okay. I got to figure out mine still.
Yeah.
I got to work on that. Yeah.
Fours kind of have that A shape, so we go with 4D4M.
Yeah.
It's easy enough.
Yeah. I like it. Yeah. I'll let you know. I'll get back to you on that one.
I was thinking about
So-
yours. I would, if you just want to use letters and numbers, I would just go with J05H.
I like it. Yeah. Let me write that down for my records.
Okay, all right.
Okay, here we go. So J0
5H.
5H. J0 dash 5H.
Whatever you want
Is
to
that
do.
how it works?
I don't
Yeah.
care where you put the dash.
That's it. I don't
Cool.
know what that's going to mean in the future for
I
us.
don't
but,
know.
You know, but at least we have it. I have it
Maybe
written
we'll-
down.
Maybe we'll put it on a shirt or something. I don't know.
Maybe. Yeah. Well, it's official. We have our
Okay.
droid designations, and we are given some happy beeps today. And Adam, what have you been up to this week?
I am like this close to finishing up Alphabet Shadow. What was it? Shadowfall, and I listened to Catalyst, the Rogue One novel audiobook.
Nice. I love Catalyst.
It's pretty good, and this is not Star Wars, but I started watching. I watched some more because I've watched it before. I watched some more What We Do in the Shadows, the Taika Waititi show. That show is it's not kid friendly, but it's it's hilarious. I love it. It's so funny.
I have not experienced it yet, so
Yeah,
where
you should
can
check
watch
it out.
that one?
It's Hulu.
That's on Hulu. Okay,
Hulu. Yeah, it's pretty good.
nice.
So what
Yeah,
have
I
you been
mean-
up to?
Well, in preparation for this week's episode, of course, I've been watching The Director and the Jedi, which
I
is
did that,
the
yeah.
kind of almost feature-length documentary on The Last Jedi.
Mhm.
But more than watching things, I've been listening to some things this week because, and this is not Star Wars related either, but I know you and I are both Shinedown fans, and
Yeah, I
lead
totally
singer
forgot to listen
Brent
to that.
Smith and I think Seth Meyers, another band member. They go by Smith and Myers,
Mhm.
and they dropped a new album called Volume One. It has a lot of great stuff on it. It's kind of like a two-man band. A lot of acoustic stuff. It's really, they do some covers, but they have done some originals for this one. And
Did you
I
say
just love
Seth
it, so-
Meyers?
Yeah, I think it is,
That's
or maybe
the
it's.
no. That's the
Oh, is that an?
that's the SNL guy.
Oh, the SNL guy must be a different Myers then.
Zach Myers and Brent Smith.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for the fact check.
Yeah.
Fact check.
No,
on
that's
that one.
okay. Something just didn't sound right there. It was like Seth Meyers. It's like that sounds familiar, but it didn't like sit right.
Yeah, I feel like I probably do that a lot,
Yeah,
where I
yeah.
just say names.
I've done it on the show
It's-
before.
Yeah,
I forget who we were talking about, and then it was like the same first name or last name, and then I forget you corrected me, and I was like, yeah.
right. It's easy to
It's
do.
easy to do. Easy to do.
Yeah. So I've been enjoying me some Smith and Myers Volume 1 for sure. I'm looking forward to Volume 2, which is coming out soon.
Nice.
Now, I have to say I dropped the ball this week on the poll because I simply forgot to do it, to be completely
okay.
transparent. But I thought of
Twitter
a
went on.
question. Yes, it did. It continued on.
Actually, it crashed one day. Maybe you did that.
Maybe it was me. No poll. Twitter
I don't
crashes.
know. I forget what day that was, but it totally crashed one day. Maybe it was just because we didn't do what we usually do.
Yeah, it's
Sorry,
it's
Twitter.
really it's a real possibility. But I did come up with a question for us to fill this time with, and that is about movie theaters. And this greatly affects Star Wars. what will the fate be basically of movie theaters with everything that's going on? Because Adam, when they started opening back up, they released Tenet. We went and saw that. It was very exciting to go see a movie on the big screen again, a new movie. And then after that, things just sort of, I mean, there's been some releases, not any big ones, and a lot of movies have been pushed back. Um, so what are your thoughts on the future of movie theaters as it stands right now?
Mm, if if we can't get back to some sort of acceptable level of venturing out into public and seeing a movie, then a lot of theaters are going to close. And I don't know if it's like big like chains, but definitely
Hmm.
like private owned theaters.
Right. Those might be permanent closings,
I hope not. I hope,
for the private ones.
yeah, I hope it
Hmm.
maybe, I don't know, I hope maybe it could be like a temporary closure and, I don't know how that would
Right.
even work, but it's like, I don't know if, I mean, if we can't get back in and spend money there, and like even I worry a little bit about Cinemark because like we've gone, you and I have gone,
Hmm.
and I love going to Cinemark. I love their experience there, but
Yep.
like I'm not giving them any money to go, because I had we had the movie club thing, and then so
Right.
we got into Empire for free,
Hmm. Hmm.
and then we got into Tenet for free because we had credits built up from like
Yep.
the spring. So like we've seen movies there, but I didn't paid anything to see them,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, I'm starting to feel that way too. Like that made me think of Mulan because
Well,
my
yeah.
Brittany wasn't very excited about watching Mulan, but I would have spent the $30 to see it soon just because I'd be like,
Hmm.
okay, I'm giving Disney money for a movie. I feel like I'm contributing to the continuation of what I love. Um, because and people might say, hey, I'd rather just watch a movie at home, which is fine. But for me, there is no comparison to actually going to the movie theater and having that experience, and I always want that to be an option,
I used to
especially
feel
for
that
those
way.
big
Like
movies.
I used to. There used to be a big part of me that would have rather just watched a movie at home, but then
Mhm.
after I go back to Cinemark and you have the recliners and you actually have walls in between your seats, and
Yeah.
I feel like a little bit of an upcharge there kind of helps too because you don't get as much people. I think people take it more seriously. Maybe I guess
Mhm.
they're spending a little bit more, so maybe it's like they're more prone to just sit down and watch and shut up for a little bit.
Right.
Um, but then, having like that wall between seats helps too because I don't have to worry about some idiot behind me kicking my seat for two and a
Kicking your
half
seat,
hours
yeah.
because that happens
Right.
all the time at
Mhm.
our local theater. Cinemark's not really our local theater, but you and I travel a little bit farther to get away from that.
Well, yeah,
Um,
I mean, because I literally have a movie theater down the road from me that
yeah,
I will not go
like 2
to
minutes from
because
yeah.
I'd rather drive 20, 25 minutes to go to Cinemark because of the experience.
Yeah, right. So Cinemark kind of changed my opinion on that, just having that different experience that's way better.
Mhm.
Uh But then you mentioned Milan, and then this past week, Disney announced that Soul, their Disney Pixar movie, that's going to be going straight to Disney Plus.
Right. Yeah.
Um, Everything Marvel's been pushed off to next year, and then Bond has gotten pushed off to next year. Now
Right.
it's going to get rough.
Yeah, I mean, and Dune got pushed back as well, and
No,
I don't know what's gonna happen with Wonder Woman or if it already got pushed back or not. I'm not sure. Um,
I'm not sure. I thought it did, but it might not have. That might have just been that first delay that I was thinking of.
right. But yeah, I mean, in my opinion, and I understand, people that don't want to go out and maybe risk if they have a health risk or anything like that. I totally get that, but I do think that there's a safe way to have these movie theaters having being open. And having newer movies. Um, I think that
I felt
I
very
mean,
safe,
I felt very safe as well.
and then we
And
are in a smaller. We're not in a metropolitan area, so
right.
that's a factor too. But I felt very safe. I thought it was clean.
Mhm.
Um, you know, actually, the way when we saw Tenet, the way that we bought our tickets, there wasn't anyone within like 20 feet of us, let alone six
Yeah,
feet.
yeah. Yeah, there was
um,
plenty.
But then
Yeah.
even like Cinemark's offering very reasonable rates on just buying out a theater.
Yeah,
It's
you
like
can rent the whole
$100
thing
and
out and
yeah, or $150, something like that, and
bring your family or whatever.
split that between like 10, 15 people, and
Yeah.
that's pretty reasonable.
Yeah, and I mean, and I've been out and about. I've gone to restaurants. I went to a birthday party yesterday, and there are large groups of people that are in these restaurants or that are outside, and they're not necessarily wearing masks, and all that stuff's still continuing. I think the major issue with movie theaters is the studios don't want to release their movies to like a half capacity, or like with only half of the theater being able to see it, and they're not going to make as much money. I think that's they've invested money into the film, have a certain budget, and then they want to at least make that back. I think there's a concern that that won't happen right
Yeah,
now.
right.
So I had this thought in my head. Well, maybe you know, yeah, maybe they have half capacity in the theater, but then maybe you have more showings. Maybe the theater, let's say, Black Widow comes out, and you dedicate like 4 screens to Black Widow, and you just
Or
space out
longer
the
periods of
showings,
time, because it's like you don't have to
yeah,
worry about pushing out Black Widow for something else.
right, yeah, have it there
You know,
longer.
even
But
if we're just looking at major releases like Black Widow or Bond or something like that, maybe you can
mhm,
dedicate half of a theater to that and let it sit for a few more weeks.
yeah. Yeah, but we'll see what's gonna happen. I'm not sure. I'm kind of concerned. I'm
Yeah,
worried about that
yeah, I don't
movie
blame
theater
you.
experience going away. And at least for the foreseeable future, the way that movies are
Hmm.
even going to be made on a smaller budget, and I like small budget films and everything, but you're not gonna. I think once this wave of
Maybe
blockbusters that was
maybe
supposed to
this
come out
is a
this year,
perfect time for something like The Volume to have existed.
yeah,
Because maybe something
mm-hmm,
like that cuts down on
yep,
budget costs, and you don't have to travel as much, and even if you don't get the on location stuff, maybe you just get kind of the next best thing for a while. maybe that
right.
maybe that helps. Maybe that was an opportune invention at the right time.
For sure. I was thinking the same thing the other day. But yeah, I think it's something we both care about. I thought we could talk about that a little bit today, just the fate of movie theaters, how it relates to Star Wars, it relates to things we love, and hopefully theaters will always be there, but we'll find out. Um, so what is coming up on this week's show, sir?
We have Star Wars news, a lot of Mando stuff I'm seeing here, and some other TV news. So we're going to cover that. And then you mentioned at the top of the show, this is Last Jedi week. So we're going to do our Thank the Maker for Last Jedi.
I think it's very fitting that, we're coming up on our anniversary of 1 year doing the
That's
show,
true. I
and
didn't think about it that
we
way.
really kicked the show off with Last Jedi, and now we're
The
coming
second
back
episode
around
was a
to it.
big
So
Last Jedi talk, yeah.
yes, yes. So here we go. Let's dive into it.
Well, you want the bad news or the really bad news?
So first up in the news today, it was announced that the Lego Star Wars Holiday Special will be on Disney Plus Tuesday, November 17th, and we have an image that is kind of a teaser. It
Yeah.
says, "To Luke from your father," with an image of a severed Lego hand.
That was
And then,
harsh.
yeah, so I'm guessing, Vader is gifting Luke with his severed hand,
Yeah.
and this is the holiday special. And there's also a little bit more information here. The Lego Star Wars Holiday Special reunites Rey, Finn, Poe, Chewie, Rose, and the droids for a joyous feast on Life Day. Rey sets off on a new adventure with BB-8 to gain a deeper knowledge of the Force. At a mysterious Jedi temple, she is hurled into a cross-timeline adventure through beloved moments in Star Wars cinematic history, coming into contact with Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader, Yoda, Obi-Wan, and other iconic heroes and villains from all 9 Skywalker saga films. We're having as far as casting goes, we have Kelly Marie Tran reprising Rose Tico, Billy D. Williams voicing Lando, Anthony Daniels as 3PO, Matt Lanter as Anakin, Tom Kane as Yoda and Qui-Gon, James Arnold Taylor, Obi-Wan, and D. Bradley Baker, Clone Troopers. So, any thoughts on the holiday special? There was a glimpse on this, a glimpse of this. Um, there was a little YouTube teaser for what's coming in November on Disney Plus, and there was a brief like image of the holiday special on there.
Yeah, that the poster, the teaser poster, was really funny.
Yeah.
It was good on them. That was a good poster. So if
Yes,
that's an indication of the humor, then we're all in for a good ride.
for
Um,
sure.
I was interested in the casting because it was interesting to see like a Kelly Marie Tran come back for that, but nobody else. You know,
Mhm. Mhm.
but those characters are part of this. Ray, Finn, Poe.
Yes. Mhm.
Uh, so that was interesting. Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Oscar Isaac voice Poe in Resistance, or is that someone else?
Yes. Yes, he
Yeah.
did.
So it's just I don't know, interesting food for thought, I guess.
Mhm. Definitely. Yeah, so
But
I'm
yeah,
excited
excited
about that
overall.
one.
The Tuesday
Yeah,
release date's a little odd for Disney Plus, but
it is.
it's usually
Uh,
Fridays for them.
Curious. I mean, Mando will probably still be going on at that time, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and it was definitely
Yes,
it's going on
that's
through
probably why.
right up through Christmas, I believe.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, interesting release day.
Mhm.
But yeah, looks pretty funny, judging just by a poster.
Definitely. And speaking of Mando, we have new character posters for The Mandalorian Season 2 coming from StarWars.com. We have the Mandalorian himself. Of course, we have the child, Cara Dune, and Grief Karga, our main characters, and an interesting background in these images as well,
That's the
and just
first thing I
some,
looked at.
yeah, and some slight wardrobe changes,
Yeah,
especially for Grief in
yeah.
these posters.
Reef is donning
So,
his Emperor red.
yeah, definitely.
Um, but
Any
yeah,
thoughts about the background?
a lot of thoughts about the
Yeah,
backgrounds. So there's interesting character. There's definitely Gamorrean
seeing a
guards there.
Gamorrean guard, yeah.
There's some things that look maybe like Tusken Raiders too.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Mhm.
Uh, I don't know what that thing is behind Grief on the top, his top right shoulder, top left of the poster. But there's this blue character with almost like these tusks on his chin with a circle and a line through it.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm
Yeah, that's
interested in that.
interesting. Mhm.
Grief also has a Gamorrean right above his left
Right,
shoulder, and
right.
then Cara Dune has a starbird
Mhm.
alliance symbol. Some people are looking at these spray painting things and thinking Sabine.
Right. Yeah, that's
So
interesting.
yeah,
Yeah, she was
um,
always a fan of doing that in
yeah,
Rebels.
yeah. So yeah, there's definitely I think meaning in those images back there.
Mhm.
And that was
Yeah,
actually
these
before
are
I even looked at the characters. I'm seeing the background, and that's kind of what I was looking at.
yeah, I think these posters are super cool.
Yeah.
Um, and I love the little hints that they have here in the background, so cool stuff. And we also got a new 30-second teaser for season 2. This focused more on, you know, um, why can't I think of his name right now?
Moff Gideon.
Yeah, this one focused more on Moff Gideon
Hmm.
and his goal of basically getting the child.
You have something I want. It will be mine.
The Mandalorian, new season streaming October 30th on Disney Plus.
There it is.
That's a pretty cool, quick look at season 2. Anything jump out at you, Adam?
Um, Not major. Uh,
Yeah.
a couple little things like you mentioned, but nothing major. It was good to, as Moff Gideon really wasn't in the first trailer at all.
Right.
So it's kind of good just to remind everyone that he's still around. He's still doing things.
Yep. Definitely. Yeah, that's the main thing I took away. And then
Hmm.
just some of those other shots that we didn't get in the main trailer.
Right.
Um, And finally, in news this week, we have a little bit of an update on the Obi-Wan Kenobi Disney Plus series. It is set to begin filming in March of 2021. Ewan McGregor confirmed this on the Graham Norton show. And, he kind of talks a little bit about how he's getting closer in age to Alec Guinness when Alec Guinness was in the original Star Wars.
He's not that
Because
close.
he's getting there.
I think he's exaggerating that a little bit, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess Alec Guinness was 62 during production on A New Hope, and McGregor will be 50 years old when production starts in March.
I guess he's a little older than I thought he was, but
yeah, he doesn't look, he looks young.
No, he doesn't look 50.
Right. And he just discussed how much of an influence Guinness was on his performance of the character in the prequel trilogy. And
Yeah.
just now that he's older, he's looking to meet Alec Guinness somewhere in the middle in terms of his performance, in between the prequels and obviously where Alec Guinness was in A New Hope. So it'll be really interesting.
Yeah, I
to see
remember we
that.
talked about that during Thank the Maker for the prequels, where he was like gradually over the 3 movies, kind of increasing his I don't want to say like imitation, but kind of like more inspiring, using Guinness as more of an inspiration as he went on through the prequels. So
For sure.
I'm actually hoping he says meet in the middle. I'm hoping for a little more towards the Guinness end of
Yeah,
Kenobi than
definitely. I'm with you on that one. And so it'll be exciting to see Obi-Wan when it happens. I can't wait for that. And that is it for the news today. And we are about to head into our main segment of the show. Thank the Maker, The Last Jedi.
Thank the Maker. This oil bath is going to feel so good.
Okay, everybody. So, Adam, I am very excited about this conversation. I love this documentary, and you're definitely going to hear a biased opinion on my part about The Last Jedi and about the director and the Jedi. I'm a big fan of this, and I know that might not be the case for all fans, and that's cool. We all have our point of views, and Adam, you might have different point of views than mine on this.
Yeah, and I'm working very hard on not letting any of those, because this segment's about thanking the work that went into the movie and taking a look at it, and I've not been shy about saying it's not my favorite of the Star Wars movies, but it doesn't mean that I can't appreciate what effort went into making it. And full disclosure, I usually kind of spearhead these segments, but last week I asked you to do that just because I didn't want, not that I would ever intentionally put less of an effort into this movie just because it's not my favorite, but I didn't want that to kind of cloud the segment as a whole, because I wanted Last Jedi to get its fair share of praise, because it may not be my favorite, but it deserves all the praise that's coming its way. So
for sure, and I appreciate that, because I was very excited to dive into this and very excited to kind of put this together, and buckle in, everybody, because this there's a lot of stuff here, and it could be a lengthy conversation about The Last Jedi, but the source on this one is the director and the Jedi. Of course, I mentioned that earlier, and I thought it was interesting that this documentary opens up kind of with Daisy and Daisy Ridley and Mark Hamill that are practicing a scene that takes place on Octo in the backyard of Pinewood Studios. They're Daisy's in her sweats, and they're in their street clothes, and they're practicing the scene where Rey basically confronts Luke about creating Kylo Ren, and that whole confrontation where she has the staff and she hits Luke with it and everything like that. So I just thought it was cool that they just did this in the backyard of Pinewood Studios out in the grass, and that just kind of stood out to me,
and even
so
I was listening to the audio commentary this week too, and just mentioning the training there, because that was one of the things that came up in the audio commentary, was just how much training went into that, especially, I know we'll get into this later, but especially during the throne room scene.
Yes, for sure. And then we kind of get a look at, I believe it was the wrap party actually, and
Yeah,
Kathleen
yeah.
Kennedy made some comments about working with Ryan Johnson and Ram Bergman. And those two, work together on, I think, all of Ryan Johnson's films. And they kind of have a unique relationship in that. And, she basically said, Kathleen Kennedy said she never had an experience like working with them. Of course, you're going to say, nice things about who you work with, but I feel like
Especially
for
at the
some
wrap
reason,
party. It's like,
yeah, yeah,
you're
yeah,
not gonna get up in there and
certainly.
say this was the
This was
worst.
terrible. This
Thank
was
God this is
awful.
over.
But I do feel like I didn't hear about any production issues and some of the other movies faced in Star Wars in the Disney area. The Last Jedi didn't seem to have those same issues for whatever reason. I think Ryan really had a specific vision that we'll talk about a little bit later. Um, and he was, very sure about what he wanted to do, and I think Kathleen Kennedy was on board, and everybody just put their energy into that vision, and it went relatively smoothly, compared to some of the other ones.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I didn't hear about a whole lot of issues during The Force Awakens either that I think
Hmm.
back on it.
Right.
But then after that just seems like an avalanche, and I don't know if that's just part of the fallout from, fans on this movie,
Yeah.
being so split on it. I don't
Right.
know. I don't know what that's about, but yeah, definitely did not have a lot of production issues, but then it seems
Hmm.
like after that, and not just the whole Colin Trevorrow thing or anything like that. It's pretty much everything has had issues.
Yeah. Yeah. So I thought that was interesting. The movie that was the most divisive um, had
Yeah,
maybe the least amount of issues.
right.
But it was also interesting that they shot on Skellig Michael, and they were continuing the end of The Force Awakens and what happened directly after that. And they only had 2 days to shoot because, Skellig Michael was kind of like a sacred place. Um, and
Yeah,
with the
yeah,
ruins and everything. And so they basically went in there early, did this shoot, and Ryan had this to say about Ray. Some young kid shows up and hands him a symbol of everything he's walked away from, being the lightsaber. It's not like he's going to fire it up and say, "Let's go." He's done with that. That's why he's here. And then we have Mark Hamill who says basically, "I fundamentally disagree with your concept of this character.
yeah,
Having said that, I'll do everything within my power to realize your vision."
yeah,
Um, so there's a lot of the first time I saw this movie, I had issues with it, and we know that. I've talked about that before. I don't want to go into that too much today,
no,
but
right, right,
I do want to say that Ryan kind of justifies a lot of his decisions throughout this documentary, whether you agree with that justification or not. And I just find it interesting the way he looks at this story and the
yeah,
way he looks at the character of Luke.
right,
Um, that basically, he coming from George Lucas and from JJ and Lawrence Kasdan, Luke is on this island.
right,
And there has to be a reason, a good reason for him being on this island. And him and Han saying, he blames himself, he went away, blamed himself for what happened and everything. So Ryan had to, in my opinion, pick that thread up and continue with it and give a good reason. There had to be some type of resistance from Luke in the beginning of the film. It was never going to be like, okay, yeah, let's go. Um, so I thought that was interesting.
yeah, yeah.
But Adam, you might fundamentally disagree with what I just said, so, which is all good.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I
I
mean,
mean, I
I
don't
don't
like
want
the
to get
throwing
into
the
that.
lightsaber over the shoulder. Like I
Yeah,
wasn't a fan of that.
I don't really want to
But
get
yeah,
into that whole thing.
right.
But I mean, I kind of fall on more Mark's side of that, and
Hmm.
really what I wanted to say about this whole segment, because this stuck out when I was watching this week also, but Mark's professionalism there is something we can all
Yeah,
learn from, and
absolutely.
he has his disagreements, and
Hmm.
he vocalized that, but he had had a respect about him that maybe some fans can learn something from. You can disagree with something, but you can still move on with your life. And Mark put his all into that, even though he maybe kind of felt like I did about Luke.
Right.
But he did the right thing about it. He put his whole effort into that, and one of the greatest performances of his career, not just as Luke, but of his career in this movie. So
I was just gonna say that. I think this is absolutely his best performance of his career. And he gave that performance disagreeing with
right,
what
yeah,
Ryan wrote for that character. So I think
right,
that's tremendous. Um, and so after this took place on Skellig Michael, basically they had to go into after that they had to go into more pre-production
yeah,
casting, that took place after that. So there was like a gap in time before they started shooting again. And the creature slash droid effects supervisor Neil Scanlon said, when it came to creatures, if we took Force Awakens and Rogue One and put them together, this project is still bigger, which I thought was fascinating. When it comes to creature slash droid effects, um,
yeah,
you put those two films together, and this was bigger. And sometimes I forget about all the creatures that are in the Last Jedi. Whether it's the porgs or the sea cow, or all the creatures that are in Canto Bite, all the aliens, all the different species. Um,
right,
and sometimes I forget about that.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, having that
And we have the
having that
crystal
scene, like,
foxes.
yeah, right,
Yeah.
right, yeah, yeah, definitely.
Did you have any thoughts on that, Adam?
No, not really. I mean, just like Canto Bite, I think definitely adds to the creatures, because you get not only just the creatures in the casino, but you get the um. Now I'm blanking on what they're called. Those horse things.
Oh yeah, the Fathiers, or however you
Yeah,
say it,
there you go. Yeah.
Fathiers. Yeah.
Yep, those
Um,
things. Yeah, you get
yeah.
those things too. So I mean, Canto Bite definitely adds to all of the creature aspects, and I love creature in Star Wars. We talked about
Mhm.
Return of the Jedi. That was like the creature movie of the original
Yes.
trilogy, and
Yeah.
um, I don't know. I just think it adds so much to Star Wars when you have that type of imaginative. Animals, creatures, alien species.
Mhm.
It just adds to it, I think.
Absolutely. And while this film didn't face as many production issues, there were still budget things, as with any film, that had to be considered. So,
Hmm.
one thing the creature department had to do was weigh the cost benefit of using animatronics versus CG creatures. Um, so they had to look at each creature and decide, okay, is this cost effective? Should we do this as an animatronic? Can we get away with doing this as a CG creature? And looking at those things. For example, the sea cow, for example, which we'll get into a little bit more later, was pretty huge, a huge animatronic. And they decided to stick with that versus the digital in that
Yeah.
situation. So yeah, they were faced with those kind of decisions. But jumping to casting actors and characters, this was basically Ryan's approach to episode 8, the middle chapter in this trilogy. And often the middle chapter, challenges the characters, challenges the audience, and his approach was to look at what he knew about each character at the end of episode 7, and how could he challenge each of them. So looking at Finn, and how could he challenge Finn's desire to only be focused on Rey, um, even though he kind of chose the resistance at the end of Force Awakens. Now, The Last Jedi was more about choosing again the resistance, but over Rey, and the importance of the whole resistance versus one other person. I think with Poe, the challenge of being a leader and what that means versus being a hero. For Rey, it was obviously the challenge of her identity and who she belongs to, and everything. So there was a lot of challenges for these characters in this film, and that's how he
Hmm.
kind of approached that. He also really struggled with the decision to kill Luke in episode 8. I recently heard something about
I was
Luke's
wondering if you're
original
gonna mention
treatment
this. Yeah,
or I'm sorry,
George's.
George Lucas's original treatment had Luke dying in Episode 8. I don't know if that's true or not.
Who knows? Because
but
then there was a little video with Mark Hamill talking about coming back and working. George talking about having him come back and working on Star Wars as like a grandfather Luke, So
right. So you never know.
it's kind of like we talked about with the sequel trilogy, with it being mishandled. It's just some of the stuff is made up on the fly. That's how it works.
Yep. Yep. It's not all always.
It's not all set in stone, even though there's a treatment. With Luke dying, it doesn't mean that was set in stone, and people will use that for arguments. Hold it up and say, "See, George says this," but
Sure.
It's just one of those things that changes.
Mhm. But I do think it seemed like Ryan really struggled with the decision.
I mean, that's a hard decision for anyone to make.
It was very difficult, something he wrestled with in his mind. As far as Rose goes, and we'll get into Luke's death a little bit later, but as far as Rose goes, to Ryan, Rose felt like this character that was this nerd that didn't really fit into Star Wars, that didn't really belong. And that was personal to Ryan, because I think that's something he felt like in his life. And he wanted to, this is how he approached the whole film, was for it to be personal. He felt like he didn't want to make a film just to appease fans. He wanted to make a film that was personal to him, because that's kind of what George did back in the day when he made the original Star Wars. It had to be personal. It had to be his story, and then hopefully people would love it or or not. So I think that's what he tried to do here with that. And there also was this interview with Carrie Fisher, and she was talking about Ryan. She said he has a very specific vision, and he's very good at working with actors, or two of the things that she said about Ryan.
She also called him an a-hole.
Yes,
but that was Carrie being Carrie.
That was Carrie being Carrie, I think.
Yeah.
But I thought what stood out to me about that was his ability to work with actors, because I've said this before many times, that I think Rian Johnson brought out the best performances in a lot of these actors for this trilogy, in my humble opinion. Ram Bergman had said about Mark Hamill, Mark thought he was going to be the Luke Skywalker of this trilogy, but really he's Obi. Really he's kind of the Obi-Wan of the trilogy, where the hero is Rey. And Mark just isn't in that role that he was hoping he would be in. So that's something that stood out to me too, just looking at Luke in that way. And Ryan also said about Rey that Rey shows up on the island with a set of expectations. He says there are folks in your life that are supposed to fill a certain thing, but we grow up and realize that doesn't always happen. So this idea of kind of meeting your hero, and that hero not being what you expected, and then you have to be the hero. And I think that's what The Last Jedi is really all about in a lot of ways. And the idea that even, we have this vision of our parents when we're younger, that they're perfect, that they can't make mistakes. And then we kind of learn later on in life that they're flawed, and that's a hard realization sometimes. So I think he uses a lot of life lessons and a lot of layers in this film.
Yeah.
And then Ryan on Kylo Ren. I thought this was really interesting. He said Kylo is a villain that you can relate to more than Darth Vader, because you can see that pull to the light that he has, and you don't really see that with Vader till the end with Luke.
Right.
He and Rey are two halves of the protagonist. So as opposed to Rey being the protagonist and Kylo being the antagonist, they're two halves of the protagonist. What do you think of that idea? Do you agree with that?
It sounds like they're a dyad to me.
It does. Yeah, for sure.
So it kind of reinforces, I think, what happens when we're going to talk about this next week in Rise of Skywalker. And what he says about Kylo is very interesting. We see, especially when he takes off that helmet and we see the person underneath. It's not this scarred, burnt,
right?
Anakin. This is a person under there that maybe we can relate to more.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that I totally get. And Rey, he and Rey being two halves of the protagonist. That's just, like I said, that's something that I'll carry it with me into the Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, no doubt. And
Because
I
for
think,
as much as is made of the Rise of Skywalker, and we will talk about this a lot more next week, but it didn't undo as much in this movie as people blame it for. So
I agree.
I think there's some, very. I think there's some very obvious and very strong beats that are carried from the Last Jedi into the Rise of Skywalker.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, definitely. And I also just think for me, what solidified this, kind of two halves co-protagonist thing was the throne room scene. Um, where it's kind of their conversations through the force
mhm.
are all leading up to this scene where they join forces, and just seeing that, I was so thrilled by that when I saw it, and then of course
Yeah.
it goes the other way. Um but
At least
that
this
that
wasn't a
just
Christopher
was
Nolan movie, because then we'd have like Dr. Seuss type of like protagonist one, protagonist two.
right, right,
That would be their actual
right.
names.
That's true. And then we get into some more shooting, and there were 120 sets created for this film, which is a lot. I couldn't find really
That's
what the
one of the
normal
things they
film
talk. Yeah,
has, but
and they made some big sets for this too.
yeah.
Like built
Hmm.
big sets for this.
Right. I mean,
And you
like
talk about the
the
budget stuff. That's one of the things they were talking about, is having to build more sets. There
yeah.
was a ton. The tree is a set.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that's the one that stood out to me, was the whole
Throne
tree
room.
scene with Yoda and everything was a set, and the throne room. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, lots of big sets, and also I know this was done in the Rise of Skywalker, but editing was done during the filming process for the Last Jedi as well.
Right.
Just because of the schedule, and everything
Yeah.
had to be
Yeah.
scheduled perfectly to be able to work with all these sets on time and get it all done. They kind of had to map this all out, and I'm sure that was a nightmare figuring that out. Um, but yeah, Ryan would kind of edit after shooting and everything and look at things. I think that would actually be helpful for a director to edit
You
during
would think.
filming. I don't know why that's not done more often,
Yeah.
actually. Because then if you need to reshoot something real quick, you could go in there
Right
and do
away.
it. But
Yeah.
yeah. Um, I thought this was really cool. They had like this tablet that they took to the throne room
Yeah.
set.
Yeah. That
Speaking of
was
the throne
very
room
cool.
set,
Yeah.
and they would look in it and turn it like on the
It's
set.
like an augmented reality type thing where, yeah.
Yeah, so it was kind of like a green screen, but when you look through the tablet, you
Right.
could see like the red of the throne room and
Yeah.
all the things digitally completed, um, which I thought was just really, really cool.
Yeah.
And then the weapons they used would actually make firing sounds and produce kickback, so it felt like you were really firing something when you were filming, which I think just helps the actors and adds to their experience.
Yeah. Except Ryan mentioned during the audio commentary that Laura Dern would just like to say pew pew when she would shoot, and you can still kind of see her lips, pew
Yeah,
when she
like
shoots. Yeah. So
yeah, that's funny. Um, I think probably my favorite part of this entire documentary is the stuff with Yoda. We see
it's my
Mark
favorite part of the
Hamill.
film too.
Yeah, yeah, and Mark Hamill visits where Frank Oz is practicing with Yoda, basically, and they have the old puppet, um, which was actually they used the original mold from the original trilogy from The Empire
Mhm.
Strikes Back to recreate Yoda,
Which is
and
interesting because I thought it looked a little different.
it did. I think when they filmed it, maybe it was because of the blue glow and like
Yeah, yeah. I
the
don't
Force Ghost
even
stuff that
his
it looked a little
shape or
different, but
whatever. It just I don't know. It
mhm,
just felt a little
yeah,
different
it did
around
feel a
his
little different
face.
to me
Around his
too.
face, it was I don't know. But yeah,
Right.
using the original mold, that's awesome. But yeah, it was just a little weird.
I agree. It
I
looked a
I
little bit
liked it
off.
being a puppet. I don't want to like
Yeah,
I'm not saying that it was weird that that they went practical with it, but it's I don't know.
because I think it would have been weirder if it had been digital,
Yeah,
because
yeah, right.
of what they said about Luke's experience with Yoda was when Yoda was a puppet. So for him to
Yeah,
interact
right,
with the digital version wouldn't have felt right. Um,
right.
and Mark Hamill got so emotional when he
Yeah.
was watching this. You could see that he was very emotional throughout this entire filming process, and rightfully so. But this was one of those moments where he was just taking it in, um, and Frank Oz thought Yoda would be digital again, so he thought he'd just have to do the voice. And
Mhm.
Brian asked him, we're doing the puppet, and he's like, "Do you know what you're getting yourself into with this?" Because it's complicated to film with a puppet, um, when you're working on a set and everything like
Yeah.
that. And speaking of Mark Hamill on set, he was often seen on set during scenes that didn't even involve him. Like he was on the Canto Bite set, and um, you could just see him like walking around looking at different things. He really gets into the whole process, I think,
We'll
which is
probably talk
awesome.
about that again next week too.
Yeah, yeah. So I just
He
love
did
that.
that for Rise of Skywalker too, just showing up and just like a kid,
Right.
just having a good
Yeah,
time.
he loves it, which is great. I can't say enough positive things about Mark Hamill. And then we had the shooting of the throne room scene, and which again is probably my favorite scene in the film. I don't know about you. And
Uh,
they
Yoda for me.
Yoda, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
well, there's a lot of great moments. I mean, I do love the opening space battle with Poe. I love all that stuff. I love the throne room scene. I love the Yoda scene. So there's a lot of good stuff. But the throne room scene they used a wide angle lens to capture the action, and Ryan compared it to kind of like a samurai style fight that took place in the throne room. And Daisy and Adam trained for 6 months so that they could perform the scene themselves, because it was really crucial to see the actors, to see them doing these things. And um,
Yeah.
I think we talked about that a little last week, even.
Yeah, a little bit last week, talking about
Hmm.
training and having them actually do that. I think back to the prequels with like Dooku having his face painted on someone else, and it's just
Right. It makes a difference,
it does.
to see the actors doing it. And I mean, that's a complicated fight. I
Yeah,
can't imagine being in the actor's shoes and having to pull that off, definitely complicated. So,
yeah.
and then next we're going to talk about Octo a little bit. And I think it's interesting that the shooting for this planet took place in 3 different locations. Skellig Michael, we mentioned earlier,
Mhm.
Pinewood Studios, with like the tree and the Yoda scene were a set at Pinewood. Um, and then Ireland, they had actually moved the set for the village, like the Jedi village where Luke
Mhm.
sleeps and
Yeah.
everything, where Ray stays, and that in the huts. They moved that actually to Ireland, from Pinewood, to film those scenes and everything. So I thought it was cool that they used like 3 different shooting
Yeah.
locations
And we didn't
for
really
this
talk about
one
this
planet.
last week, but that type of stuff happened in Force Awakens too, where
Hmm.
they would film some stuff and then have to get they'd have to go back and not really reshoots, but get some more stuff. Uh, and they would do that like on the roof of Bad Robot or something, and
Yeah,
you know. So
right.
yeah, it's interesting because you see it and it's so well done with editing and post, and it's like you don't even know.
Hmm. Yeah, it's very seamless,
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I think this is actually my favorite planet in the sequel trilogy. I think it just has a lot of history. It has a lot of meaning, and it's
Hmm.
beautiful to look
I
at.
never thought about
You
my
know,
favorite planet in the sequels.
yeah.
It's interesting.
So I think this is probably mine.
I really like Exegol.
Exegol's cool,
Exegol's cool.
but I like that we
A
get to
lot
see
of
Octo like
yeah,
twice
yeah,
too,
true. Yeah,
or 3 times actually. It's in all 3 of the
yeah, it is.
sequel
Yeah.
trilogy. So, um, and then we had the massive animatronic sea cow that I mentioned before. It had to
Hmm.
be actually flown in via helicopter, placed there. Um, and to top it all off, it could actually be milked, which I think is really cool. And I think there was actually like Adam doesn't, but I think there was actually white milk coming out of the thing when they were shooting it, which was interesting. Not green. They must have changed that.
Oh my.
But yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people have an issue with that scene. but I think it just feels so real that there's this like Luke is trying to live off of this island, and you see him fishing, you see him like milking this thing. Like we don't see that a lot in Star Wars, like where they get their
No,
food from and
no, we
stuff. You
don't.
know what I mean? So I thought that was cool, but I know there's a lot of people that would disagree with me on that one, which is fine.
It's a
Yeah.
comical moment. I'll give it that.
It is.
And
It
it's
made for a lot
comical
of
that
good
it's comical that for some reason we have to actually milk it.
Yes. So yeah, that thing could actually be milked. Wow, amazing. So, but let's move on to kind of we're coming to the close of this segment and talking about Luke's death. And Ryan, it was a struggle. We talked about that. He really wanted Luke's death to be on Luke's terms. And, not for him to be offed by like Snoke or somebody like that, but for it to be this kind of sacrificial thing, for it to have peace and purpose, and to feel like a victory. And, his sacrifice basically saves and inspires a new generation of heroes, especially Rey, who takes up his mantle in a way. So, what are your thoughts of this explanation behind Luke's death?
I don't know that I've ever really been bothered by the way that Luke died in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have that issue, and I feel like when people know that I don't like The Last Jedi, like, oh, so you don't like the Luke thing. No, I'm actually okay with how Luke died.
Yeah.
I think that death for him makes sense. You don't want Luke to get stabbed through the heart like Han did. That's not how I want Luke to go out. So for Luke to go out the way that he did here, definitely it feels heroic. It gives your heroes a chance to escape, because that's kind of what he's really trying to do, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And so that all sits very well with me.
Yeah. And I love how Ryan tells the way he works this story. In the beginning, Luke is all against him being a legend. He thinks that the fact that him being a legend is actually what led to Ben becoming Kylo Ren, and everything, and blames himself. But then in the end, he realizes the galaxy needs the legend of Luke Skywalker to be inspired and to continue and fight on and be the spark that kind of lights the fire that burns the First Order down. So I just think it's really a beautiful way of bringing things full circle in the film. And one of the last points I want to make here is another one of my absolute favorite moments from this film. And the first few times I saw it, there were tears. Not gonna lie. But just the scene between Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher, Luke and Leia on Crate, and just them reuniting and being on screen together, and knowing now that was the last time that would happen, and just the emotion behind that. And I think Carrie gives such a beautiful performance, and Mark does too. And I just love that scene. And Luke says no one's ever really gone, and I think it has meaning that is on a deeper level than just it has meaning in the film. With Han and Ben and everything not being really gone, but it also has meaning in the real world with Carrie passing away. And so I just think it's just beautiful.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's kind of how I wanted to end the talk on the director and the Jedi, unless you had any final thoughts on this documentary.
No, I mean, I've watched this before a few years ago. It was nice to go back and revisit it. Kind of revisit it after the whole. Because last time I watched it was right after the home release. So it was good to go back and see it, revisit it after all is said and done. With the trilogy as a whole. So. Once again, for me, this is one of those things that I just. I'm glad we're doing these segments, this series of shows, just because we get a chance to go back and, look at the behind the scenes stuff and just kind of give some appreciation for what happened with making this movie, because no matter how I feel about it, no matter how Mark Hamill feels about it, there was so much work and dedication that went into making this thing happen. That it's good to go back and give it that attention. So
Absolutely. So and I feel that the Director and the Jedi is a wonderfully made documentary. If you haven't checked it out yet, I think it's well worth it. And I mean, even if you completely disagreed, fundamentally disagreed with things that happen in this movie, it kind of gives some perspective and sheds some light on. You kind of get into Ryan's mind of why these decisions were made. And while it might not change your mind, it might give you a little bit more perspective and also just appreciation for the film process and everything that went into The Last Jedi. So give it a look if you haven't. I know it's on the Blu-ray and everything, I believe. So
yep, it's on the Blu-ray. It's on the digital copies too.
So that concludes Thank the Maker, The Last Jedi edition.
You ready to wrap up episode 50?
Yes, sir.
I'm just glad you're here. At the end.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in once again. 50 episodes deep into this podcast. That's hard to believe. But we hope you enjoyed our Last Jedi Thank the Maker segment. We hope you had a lot of fun with us this week. Remember to subscribe to the podcast. We're on pretty much all the major podcast apps out there. And if you're on one like iTunes or Apple Podcasts, I guess it's called now, make sure you can leave us a review. It helps us know what we're doing right, what we can do better, and it helps us get out to more people as well. We have a few things to touch on for some programming updates. Next week, we're going to have Thank the Maker for Return of the Jedi. Wow. We're going to Thank the Maker
We're going back.
We're going to thank that one again. No, we're actually going to look at The Rise of Skywalker. And so that will be our main segment next week. However, we also have we have a fun little review of a book for next week with a special guest. So make sure that you tune in for that. I'm not going to reveal who it is.
You're going to want to tune into that one. You're going to want to tune in.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So yeah, make sure you tune in next week for that fun segment. And I'm not going to tell you who it is. You're going to have to listen. So
suspense.
Yeah. Check out the website from acertainpointofview.com for blog articles, where you can contact us, all the different places. You can send us, questions, show topics, anything like that. You have links to all of our socials, which are Instagram, Certain POV Pod. Twitter is also Certain POV Pod. Facebook page is From a Certain Point of View. Discord server, links for that are in the show notes and on the website. And I'm going to circle back to that because you're going to want to be in the Discord server here in a few days for sure. Our email address is certainpovpod@gmail.com, and you can leave us a 60-second voicemail on anchor.fm if you have questions about the show. If you want to get your appreciation for The Last Jedi in, we would love to play those voicemails. And like I said, let's go back to Discord for a second, because this week on the 22nd, we're going to start some Mandalorian watch parties, and we're going to do one of those a night, starting on the 22nd, which would lead us right up through the 29th. We'll watch Chapter 8, and then the 30th, we have Season 2 kicking off. So what we're going to do with these, starting at 10 p.m. In our Discord server, we now have 2 brand new channels in there. There is a watch party chat, and that will be for text chat. So at 10 p.m., you can either start it on your TV, or I will have the video playing in our Discord server. Probably have to mute a good bit of that so we don't get any copyright trouble. But you at least have that to know where we're at in the show, or like I said, start it on your own TV at 10 p.m. Join the Discord server, and you can chat right along with us. So that will be the 22nd at 10 p.m. Watch Mandalorian Chapter 1 with us and chat with us in Discord. So that'll be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to that.
Yes, I am very excited for that.
Red5 Network, that is our home on the internet, on Twitter. check out red5network.com because there are so many great podcasts on there, including 2 brand new ones and a brand new squad this week. We have the Blue Squadron now, and so we want to welcome Wookiee Radio and Rogue One Radio as well. Brand new to the Red 5 Network this week. 2 great shows. I've hung out with Wookiee Radio before. Great guys over there. Check everyone out there. There's so many great things going on at Red 5 Network. And like I said, they are growing, getting bigger. So it's good stuff. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at the Gauze85. Josh, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Jedi Jar 1722. Kind of stumbled on that one. Jedi Jar 1722. And I just want to thank everybody for joining us today. Whether you're listening to us on your podcast or on YouTube, I just want to remind you to check out our YouTube channel, subscribe there. All our episodes will be featured, and you'll get to see our faces on there as well if you want to. But I understand if you don't.
I have a face for podcasting.
But anyhow, thank you so much for joining us for episode 50, a landmark episode where we circled back to The Last Jedi, the thing that divided us and then brought us back together. And until next time, remember that everything we said today was true.